Hello everyone. This is the second, if you would like to take it as a series, class about upper spine, thoracic, neck, shoulder mobility and how they can lead us into movement. If you haven't taken it, the class that I posted prior to this is kind of the beginning, and it might be a little bit simpler in some ways. So if you want to try that first, feel free to go ahead. If you are ready, if you've already taken it, or if you just want to go wild and take this one, feel free to go ahead and lay down onto your back. We're gonna take a second to find any kind of comfortable position you feel happy with, and if you need a little check-in, need a little movement, you take all of the little movements, anything that might feel interesting or useful, so that you can use the support of the ground to help you locate yourself. Locate yourself in space, locate yourself energetically, see how things are today, what's going on, how your body feels, how your mind feels, what kind of practice you want, and then see if you can be open to whatever else might come up as we go. And I'm going to start with a little therapeutics stuff that I borrowed from my friend, and I'm going to bend the knees, but you can also do this or start with the legs straight and then bend them as needed. I'm going to lift the arms just straight up towards the ceiling and widen the shoulder blades on the back a little bit, and then grab opposite elbows and see if you can figure out a way that you can also switch it, right? So however you're doing the grabbing, see if you can take both variations, right? And then we're gonna just move the elbows from side to side, trying to take the elbows to the ground besides the torso. And they might or not get there depending on a number of things. One of them being whether or not the rib cage and the spine are following the movement of the arms. And if you would like to, you can start just trying to move the arms and keeping the ribs, the back of the head, the back of the pelvis, the whole spine as nice and quiet as possible, and allowing the shoulder girdle, which involves collarbones, shoulder blades, and upper arms, to move around as they follow the elbows from side to side. And then gradually, you can let your ribs follow a little bit. And as you let your ribs follow, you should be able to go a little bit more into the ground. If you weren't touching the ground before, you might be able to touch it now. And just see what happens. I invite you to keep some attention onto the back of the head and the neck, and see if even as your shoulder girdle and rib cage start to move around a little bit more, can your head stay heavy and quiet? Sometimes when we go for mobilizing neck, shoulders, upper spine, then we also create a little bit of tension. It can be a little bit unfamiliar for the body to move in some of the ways that we're going to do. So just check in and see that you can also let the head and neck feel supported, at least while you're here on the ground. And then you're going to add the head going in the same direction as the elbows, and see how that changes the movement. And even as you're rolling your head from side to side, can the back of your skull stay nice and heavy? And it's almost as if you were turning the head from the weight of your brain inside your skull, not so much because you're trying to move it around, but just because you're letting things fall from side to side. And then whenever you're ready, if you would like to take yet another variation, you're gonna do the head in the opposite direction from where the elbows and the ribs are going. And this will likely make it a little bit harder to touch the ground. I would say don't go so far that you feel your neck has to do a lot of crunching or contracting to stay in place or to oppose the rotation of the ribs. But see if you can stay for now within a very comfortable baseline of movement where there isn't a lot of stress. And then at some point, whenever you're ready, you're just gonna kind of keep the movement going, just swinging from side to side. Maybe even pay a little less attention to it as the arms just kind of keep like a metronome tick-tocking from side to side. I'm just gonna switch the grasping of the elbows to what might be a little bit of the unfamiliar shape. And then I'm gonna add the knees. So if you have your legs straight, you might wanna bend the knees, put the soles of the feet on the floor, and the knees are gonna go opposite the arms. So if your head is still going opposite the arms, you'll have your knees and your head going one way and your elbows going the other way. And your knees might not want to go all the way down to the floor. You can also consider how much of your pelvis you want to move for now. And perhaps if you want to keep the focus mostly on the arms and the shoulders, your knees just kind of gently sway from side to side, but they don't drop all the way. If your back feels ready for it, right? And if it's interesting to you right now, you can let yourself drop all the way down to the ground, which will require a little bit more activation from your core to pull yourself back up. And as always, when there is more effort involved, some of the subtleties might get lost. So if you want to stay with the subtler sensations, I would suggest making the movement a little bit smaller. And then we're going to switch just the head. So the head is going to go with the elbows and the knees are going to go opposite, right? And this might be a little bit easier to organize. It might allow the legs to take a little bit bigger movements or not. Just see what happens. We're making our way back into our basic elbow movement, but we added the knees. See what this one feels like, and then whenever you're ready, the head is going to come back to center, and you're just kind of going to move the knees and the elbows. And see if you can also notice what it feels like to stabilize, or to let the head and the neck just be nice and heavy, and then let the entire torso get really quiet, which means also that the knees are probably not going to go so far to the side if you want to keep your pelvis relatively still on the ground. I find for me there isn't really a lot of movement that I can be doing the knees without the pelvis moving at all, but and see what it feels like to have this sort of cylinder of your axial body, pelvis, ribs, head, really quiet, and your limbs kind of tick-tocking around side to side like a metronome. And then eventually you're going to make your way back to center. You can take a moment to release the arms, you can take a moment to release your legs, you can shake yourself out as always if you want to, any movement, any stretch, any wiggle to help you come back to your comfort state where you might want to notice how your body feels now and if there's anything going on. The next thing that we're going to do is more of a core activation, and we're just going to start to work on a pattern. So take breaks whenever you need to, see where your energy level is today and how hard or not you want to work. What I'm more interested in is the pattern. If you want to add some strengthening, then you're welcome to push it into the core stuff or take it easy, right? I'm going to bend the knees again, bring the soles of the feet on the floor and interlace the fingers behind the head so my elbows can be nice and wide and open to the side. As I open my elbows to the side, I might feel a desire to lift the chest up, so I'm going to try to also drop the chest and the sternum down and kind of think about spreading wide more than arching the back. And then I'm going to pick up my head and shoulders just a little bit, right, or however much you want, and trying to keep the elbows to the side. I'm going to start to imagine I'm in a kayak, and I'm going to kayak with my elbows as the rows. So my two elbows are sort of drawing circles, right, on the two sides, and my torso should be turning around from side to side as the elbows move. And if you'd like to change your perspective, you can notice either you pay attention to the elbows kayaking, but if you place your attention to your nose should be drawing a sort of horizontal 8 shape, like infinity sign, where the center point is right in front of you and the two eyes of the 8 or the circles, whatever you call them, are on one side and the other side. And just take a few rounds of these, feeling free to take breaks whenever you need to. Notice if it changes your experience of the movement to pay attention to the elbows or to pay attention to the nose. And then eventually we'll find your way back to center. I like to give a little tug to the back of the neck before I release it down, just because there is some tension there. And then release the head down, release the arms down, and just let yourself rest for a second. Again, and as always, anything at all that you might need to do or move around or wiggle or stretch, you'll do that. There's one more of these. We're gonna reverse the patterns. The kayaking that we were doing, well, I didn't specify actually, but I was kind of thinking about kayaking forward, so that the elbows kind of dip forward and down. And now we're gonna kayak backwards, right? I've never gone kayaking, so I don't know if that's how it works, but in my mind, that's how it works. So hopefully it's true. Or you can send me better images that are more appropriate for this. So whenever you're ready, interlace the fingers behind your head again and lift your head and shoulders, and then you kayak your elbows backwards. And see what that feels like. Now if you're on a really sticky mat, it might actually be a little bit harder. I'm kind of sliding a little from side to side, but it doesn't really matter. We're gonna take this pattern a bunch of times. I just like doing it in this position, which is probably the hardest one of them all, to add some strengthening for the core. And you can shift your attention from the elbows to the nose to see what's happening, to see if that changes your experience or not. And then whenever you've had enough of this, take a moment and softly release your head back down to the floor. And maybe even stretch your legs out. Maybe give yourself a couple of deep breaths, just to let your belly soften too. So all of that work that we just did can get released some, right? Whenever you're ready, I'm gonna hug the knees in towards the chest. You could roll over to one side, or if you like to, you can rock and roll forward and back a few times if that's okay with your back, if it's appropriate with the floor that you're on. And we're gonna make our way up to find a seat. As we come to our seat, we're not gonna stay here for very long, but I'd like to reiterate those patterns, and you might be better able to see what's happening now. So if you'd like to sit on something, a block or a blanket, feel free to grab any support you might like. We're gonna start with the hands interlaced behind the head, trying to find a sort of neutral-ish spine, right? So again, the tendency for most of us is to push your chest forward. Doesn't really need to go. If it goes a little, it's fine, but like, can be pretty minimal. So there's more work in the shoulders and less in the spine. And then I'm gonna kayak forward, right? And the tendency, I think, for a lot of us is to let the head kind of drop down and swim, which makes it in some ways a little bit easier. And I'd like you to consider if you can spiral an 8 around your vertical axis. So I'm kind of looking from side to side on a horizontal plane, right? My elbows are drawing circles or more like ovals maybe. And my nose is drawing this sort of 8, where it goes down and under to the right and up and over, and then down and under to the right, left and up and over. And the elbows tries to stay wide to the side. Pelvis is steady, you're sitting on it, lower back is just getting pulled around a little bit, probably into the rotations. There's some side bending, there's some rotating, there's a little bit of extension as you take it through your upper and over. And I always get dizzy doing this. If that happens to you too, make it smaller maybe, or maybe don't look around so much. We're gonna take a moment in the center. If you want, you can even release your arms down just to let the body reset and resettle into a centered position, into finding this sort of neutral vertical place. And you might still feel all of this kind of swoopy space around you. And then interlace the fingers again. And just for fun, we're gonna kayak backwards, just to see what that one feels like. I actually find it quite satisfying, but to each his own. And I feel like I take it a little bit more into spinal extension as I go up and back. I find myself diving towards the ceiling a little bit more. Might just be me. And I'll take a few rounds of these. Your shoulders and thoracic spine might be a little crinkly and crackly, which is probably okay, but if it's uncomfortable, make the movement a little smaller, or see if you can slow down where things get a little crackly and find some softness. And then eventually I'll make my way back to center. From here, I'm gonna try to soften the sternum and the chest and open the shoulders a little bit wider, the elbows, excuse me, a little bit wider to the side. Keep this sort of setup as I release the fingers and just reach them up overhead towards the ceiling. And notice the relationship between my ears and my arms, where they are in relationship to each other. And notice what's happening in my back, in my shoulder blades, in my ribs. And then we'll take the hands back down, nice and easy, and take a moment to make our way into a hands and knees position and take some cats and cows. And we're gonna take some freedom in a second. If you wanna wiggle yourself out, please do, but I like to start with very, very simple cats and cows because they are so linear. And we just work a lot on movements that are swoopy and three-dimensional, and there is spirals and side bends and back bends and forward bends and changes of direction. And then you can come into your cats and cows and they're just simple spinal flexion, spinal extension. You're moving along the same plane, the same line. And sometimes it's interesting, I think, to notice what comes up if we pay attention to two different things or to two opposite things, right? Our brains work in very dualistic ways. Sometimes we understand from comparison. So see what this one feels like. And then once you've had enough of it, or you have enough information, or you're tired, or you don't like it, you take a moment to wiggle yourself out and around, giving yourself a little bit more freedom to explore movement in any way that feels interesting and useful. We will attempt a couple of arm balances later on in class, so this could also be a good movement to take a couple of shoulder stretches or just to check in with your wrists and with your hands and see where you're at today in terms of potential weight bearing. And just as a little disclaimer, we are going to do a little bit of switching direction, switching from the front to the back of the mat. So if you need to organize your space so that you have enough, comfortable enough space on either side of the mat, you can do that. And I'm gonna assume that you can somewhat take the footwork on your own as we switch directions. So I'll try to remind you as we go, but there will be a little bit of that assumption of placing the feet without me being super specific about it. Whenever you're ready, whenever you've had enough of this wiggling around, we'll make our way into a downward facing dog. And as you come to downward facing dog, as always, you can take a moment to pedal out the feet, stretch your calves, see how your shoulders are doing here. And again, especially now that you're upside down in downward dogs and forward folds, I invite you to shake off your head a little bit. We're doing a lot of that upper back and neck movement, so see that you can also give them some time to recuperate and to soften. And then whenever you're ready from your downward dog, slide forward into a plank position, adjust your stance as needed. And then we're going to lower down just very, very simply. You can take your knees down and take the rest of your body down, forehead on the mat. From here, take a little cobra, reaching forward even more than you reach up. And see if you can wiggle your shoulders, maybe give them a little circling. So it's different muscles that you're using to lift your body up. And then see if you can lift your arms into a cactus shape of sort. And come out to the side. Take a deep breath in. And then as you breathe out, release your forehead back down to the floor. Press yourself back up into your downward facing dog. In downward facing dog, take a couple of moments to pedal out the feet again. And then whenever you're ready, I'm going to take an inhale to lift the right leg up. And then exhale to open the hips and take a bend in the knee. I'm going to stay here for a breath or two. I like to drop the left heel to stretch the calf a little bit more. You can also circle your right knee around or circle your right ankle around. On the next inhale, reach your right knee further up towards the ceiling, and then as you breathe out, take the knee forward and step the foot between your hands, taking your back knee down. From here, we're going to come up into Anjaneyasana, and you'll figure out where you want to be with your pelvis, because we're going to move the torso, so see if you can give yourself a little bit of stability. Interlace the fingers behind the head and kayak forward And see if you can see the space from side to side. All around you. If you get dizzy, slow it down, take a break. Good. And then the next time I go up and over with the left elbow towards the left, I'm going to take it down all the way across to the right knee. And then release the hands, let the spine extend back out, and I'm going to twist with the left elbow hooked to the outside of the right knee. You can place the palms together. Take one more breath or so in your twist. On an exhale, we'll take the hands back down to the floor and step back into downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, take a breath in to come forward into a plank position. With an exhale, lower down, knees first, make it easy, forehead to the ground. And this time, if you want to try it, we're going to interlace the fingers behind the head and then lift up into a little cobra. It's going to be quite a bit harder, and especially for the neck and traps. So you don't have to push down with the hands and push back with the head. I think that kind of adds unnecessary stress. And see if you can open your elbows wide to the side and see where you're at. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, release your forehead, release your hands, and make your way back into downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, we'll just simply go to the second side, taking the left leg up towards the ceiling on a breath in, opening the knee, opening the hips, and bending the knee. On an exhale, I'm going to stay here, drop the right heel on the floor to stretch the calf, maybe circle the left leg around or the left ankle around if you like to do any of those. And then on an inhale, I'm going to reach the left knee further up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, take the knee towards the nose and step the foot between the hands. Take the back knee down. I'm going to come up into my Anjaneyasana. Set myself up so that my lower body is nice and stable. Interlace the fingers behind the head and kayak around, kayaking forward. Does that make sense? I'm going to try to stay on my vertical axis with the spine as much as possible, even though there is little side bending happening as I dip. And then the next time I go up and over with the right elbow, I'm going to dive it a little bit further to hook to the outside of the left knee and then release the hands, release the spine. So I also get all of that flexion out of the spine as I find my twist. And stay for a breath or two. Palms can be together. You can use your top hand to push onto the bottom hand to twist around. Just one more breath. And then on an exhale, release the hands down and step back into downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, take a breath in to reach forward into a plank pose. And with an exhale, lower all the way down to the ground again. Have a couple of options for this next one. The hardest one, and by hardest I mean more effortful, right, is with the hands interlaced behind the head, but you could also do it with your arms in a cactus shape. We're going to lift up into a little cobra and kayak backwards from here. So I find it really hard with the hands behind the head, and my neck has been a little tight lately. So the cactus arms make it a little bit harder to find the shape, the pattern. Then I can think about my nose maybe drawing the 8, and it gives me a little bit more freedom to the neck. So either variation. At some point, woo, you release your hands back down, release your forehead down. Press your way back into child's pose for a moment, or you can go straight into downward facing dog, but I find it useful to just let the forehead release down to the floor for a breath or two. Find the support of the ground, relax the back of the neck, the back of the ribs, the shoulders. After all of that work. And then we'll make our way back up into downward facing dog. Same, but a little different, actually. Same idea, but a little different. I'm going to take an inhale, lift the right leg up. And then exhale, open the hip, take a bend in the knee. Take a breath in here. And as you breathe out, take your knee towards the nose, step the foot forward between the hands, and take the back knee down. This time I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna draw big eights with my hands. So you can start with your arms, actually let's start with the arms in front. So they're about where the center of the 8 would be. I'm gonna dip down to the left, up and over to the left, through center, down to the right, up and over to the right, and through center, right? So it's kind of like the hands might be leading, but maybe it's the same 8 that you're drawing with your nose. And the pelvis is gonna stay as quiet as possible so that most of the movement happens in the upper body. And then the next time I go up and over to the right, this is a transition we'll do later again, but I'm gonna dip down, take the hands to the floor, brush the floor and come into gate pose on my left hand and left knee, all the way to the back of the mat. Right leg is gonna straighten up. I'm gonna do it again if you need to see it, right? I'm gonna take my 8, go up and over to the right, and then follow the sweep of the hands and let the feet just get organized. Left hand will come to the floor. Once you're there, you can take your right arm next to your ear, you can have it up towards the ceiling if you wanna check your balance. You can lift your right leg up, any of those variations. We'll take one more breath, and to come back, we're gonna take the right hand down and walk towards the right foot. So I come back to my lunge, tuck the back toes under, and step back into downward facing dog. And this time take any vinyasa you'd like. We'll go forward into our plank position, maybe take a knees, chest, chin, maybe take a chaturanga, some kind of cobra upward facing dog that satisfies you, and then we'll go back up to downward dog to come to the second side. Take an inhale, lift the left leg up, exhale to open the hips, take a bend in the knee, take a breath in, and as you breathe out, take the knee forward and step the foot between the hands, take the back knee down. And here I'm gonna lift the arms up, I'm in my Anjaneyasana, and I'm gonna dive the hands down and back to the right, and up and over to the right, through center, down and back, to the left, up and over to the left. And my 8 is kind of like draping around me, right? It's almost like wings. My pelvis is gonna stay relatively quiet. Balancing might be a little tricky. If you're following your hands with your gaze, I find it especially hard when I look up and down. Side to side I can handle, up and down makes it really hard. And then the next time I go down and under to the left, up and over to the left, I sweep, taking my hands all the way towards the back of the mat. Right hand will find the floor, and I'll be in gate pose. You can let your right foot swing behind you any degree, whatever works well in your hips. And I'm gonna do it again on this side. Should you wanna see it, if you're in gate pose, please stay there. I'm gonna go down towards the left, up and over to the left, and then sweep towards the back of the mat to find my gate pose. If you wanna take a balance, you take your balance. I've been enjoying just side stretching a lot here, which is not necessarily the traditional way, but it's what I like. And then to come back, we'll take the left hand down to the floor, bend the left knee, and kind of walk our way around towards the left foot to find a lunge. Tuck your back toes under, step back into downward facing dog, and this time from downward facing dog, we'll take a little walk, make our way forward into a forward fold. And in your forward fold, you can shake off your head. You can grab opposite elbows again. You do whatever you need to do. Eventually, once you've shaken out all of the things that you need to shake out, we're gonna make our way up into mountain pose. You can roll your spine up, finding your feet on the ground, and come up to stand. Feet together or hip width apart, your choice. Will take 3 sun salutations. I'll talk you through, but if you'd like to take variations and move at your own rhythm, obviously feel free to do that. I invite you to consider this linearity of sun salutations too. So we're back into the same, similar as cats and cows, we're back into that forward and back plane of movement. That's pretty simple. If you'd like, you can even lift and lower your arms in front of you as opposed to sweeping them out to the side if you want to enhance that. But feel free to play with whatever you need to play with. If you're going with me, find your mountain pose and then take an inhale to lift your arms up. And exhale to fold forward and take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, look forward for your half lift. Exhale to hop or walk and take your vinyasa of choice. Knees, chest, chin, chaturanga, half chaturanga, upward facing dog, or cobra. We'll meet back in downward facing dog. Downward facing dog will take 2 or 3 breaths, maybe just to stay there. Maybe downward dog is a little bit of another check-in place. Not a whole lot of hard work, hopefully. And then whenever you're ready, on an exhale, bend the knees between your hands. Take a hop or take a walk, feet towards the hands. Inhale, half lift. Exhale, refold. And then inhale, reverse to swan dive, come all the way up. Exhale, arms by your sides. Inhale, lift the arms up, maybe look up. Exhale, fold forward, take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, look forward for your half lift. Exhale, hop or walk. Take your vinyasa of choice. Back in downward facing dog for a couple of breaths. Just let yourself rest. Let yourself soften as much as possible, given that this might not be your favorite position to be in. And then on an exhale, bend the knees, look between your hands, take a hop or a walk. Feet towards the hands. Inhale for your half lift. Exhale to fold. And inhale to reverse your swan dive, come all the way up. Exhale, arms by your sides. Last one, if you're moving with me, inhale, lift your arms up. Exhale, fold forward, take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, look forward for a half lift. And exhale to hop or walk. Vinyasa of your choice. Feel free to skip it, obviously, whenever you want to. Or add an extra push-up or 3. Or anything in between. And then from downward facing dog, bend the knees, look between your hands. Take a hop or a walk. Feet towards the hands, inhale, half lift. Exhale, fold. Reverse your swan dive, come all the way up. Exhale, arms by your sides, mountain pose. Take a moment here to pause. See what it feels like. See what kind of space and which parts of the body you might have awakened in this time, if anything has changed. And then you can keep your feet together or have them hip width apart, and we'll take a chair pose. Sweep your arms forward and up and see where they land without too many adjustments. And then interlace the fingers behind your head and kayak forward in your chair pose. And then kayak backwards. See if your hips can stay relatively quiet. And then you make your way back to center. Same as we did in our seats. Maybe push your head back a little bit, widen the elbows, and then keep all of that as you release your fingers up towards the seating. And see if they're in a different place, if your arms are in a different relationship with your ears. Take a breath in, and then breathe out and fold forward. Take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale for a half lift. Exhale, hop or walk. Take a vinyasa or not, your choice. We're gonna meet in downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, take a breath in to lift your right leg up. Exhale, step the foot forward in between your hands and come into a high lunge. If you want to widen your stance a little bit, feel free to do that. From here, we'll take the hands forward and take our 8s down to the left, up and over to the left, down to the right, up and over to the right. And just see if you can negotiate balancing with all of this. See what your gaze can or wants to do. Whee! And the next time you go up and over to the left, we're gonna dive it into a twist towards the right. Same as before, with the elbow hook towards the knee, but the back leg is straight, or whatever other variation you like to take. One more full breath in and full breath out to release your hands down and step back to a vinyasa or to downward facing dog, your choice, and we'll go to the second side. We're just gonna add pieces to this basic sequence, right? On your next inhale, lift the left leg up, and then exhale, step the foot forward between the hands, maybe widen your stance a little bit and come up into your high lunge, down towards the right, up and over to the right, down to the left, up and over to the left, and just kind of swing around from side to side, negotiating balance, gaze, stability and mobility. And then the next time you take your down to the right, up and over to the right, let the dive take you a little bit lower across to the left to find your twist. And then organize palms together. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, release your hands down to the floor. Step back to a vinyasa or to downward facing dog. Whenever you're blended, right leg goes up as you breathe in. As you breathe out, step the foot forward and come up into your high lunge again. We'll just take 1-8 to establish the pattern. You can take more if you want. Down to the left, up and over to the left. Down to the right, up and over to the right. The down to the left is now going to sweep us around to a warrior 2 on the left leg. And then your right arm is just going to keep it circle around to find your warrior. Once you're here, you could stay. If you want to, I'm going to add a little shoulder mobility. I'm going to internally rotate my right arm, externally rotate my left arm, reach forward and release the left ear towards the left shoulder, and then reverse the rotation and reach the right ear to right shoulder. And as you either stay in warrior 2 or swing from side to side, see if you can find a sense of lateral body. So again, we went from all of that sweeping around and twisting into this very flat lateral shape. I'm going to come back to your warrior 2. If you're doing your shoulder thing, straighten the front knee. If you need to shorten your stance a little bit, take a reverse triangle and then come into triangle pose, thinking of it as a flat two-dimensional shape almost. Of course we're not two-dimensional, we're full of spirals and weird shapes and angles, but just see if you can experience this in comparison or in contrast more than comparison to all of those 8 spirally sweeping around movements that we're working on. So this is really as flat and linear as possible. Good. And then you bend the front knee, take an inhale to come back up into your warrior 2. We'll take the arms forward and take a couple of 8s down to the left, up and over to the left, down to the right, up and over to the right. One more time. The second time that I go up and over to the right, I'm then gonna let myself spiral to a twist towards the left leg. Back heel is gonna lift up off the floor. If you want, maybe this time right hand goes down, left arm goes up. Just one more breath because you've been here before. And then we'll take the hands down and we'll step the right foot forward to meet the left. So we'll end up in a forward fold facing the back of the mat. If you need to arrange yourself in space, feel free to do that. And then from here, we'll take an inhale for a half lift. And then exhale to fold. And then inhale to reverse swan dive, come all the way up. And then arms down by your sides. Take an inhale for chair pose. See where your arms land. Just for the shoulders, interlace the fingers, press the palms behind your head, open the elbows, and then re-straighten the arms and see if anything changed. Take a breath in. As you breathe out, fold forward, fingertips to the floor. Inhale for your half lift. Exhale to hop or walk. Take a vinyasa if you like, skip it if you want. We'll meet in downward dog and go to the second side. Whenever you're ready, left leg goes up. And then step the foot forward between the hands, come up into your high lunge. From high lunge, you go down to the right, up and over, down to the left, up and over, down to the right, to warrior two, to the right. And you might need to adjust your feet, of course, as always. That's the fancy footwork that I'm not teaching you today. Externally rotate right arm, lean towards the right, and then externally rotate left arm, lean towards the left. If you want to add your little shoulder rotations, you don't have to. You can also stay in warrior two. Eventually, we will make our way into a warrior two, nice and stable. To straighten the front knee, maybe shorten your stance, reverse triangle, right arm reaches up. And then almost like a stick figure on a piece of paper, as flat as possible, as two-dimensional as possible. I find my very, very linear triangle pose. And you might look up towards the ceiling or not even. That's up to you. See what your neck is up to today. But I'm just gonna imagine myself like a two-dimensional drawing and see if that changes my experience of the pose, which as always it might or not. On an inhale, I'm gonna come back up to warrior two. Find my eights, down to the right, up and over, down to the left, up and over, down to the right, up and over, down to the left, and I'm gonna dive it all the way around to my twist, lunge, maybe left hand down, right arm up, this time. And then we'll take the hands down, step the left foot forward to meet the right, hang in a forward fold for a second, relax the head. Take an inhale for a half lift, exhale to refold, and inhale to reverse to swan dive and come all the way up. Arms down by the sides, mountain pose. We have one more set of standing poses, and essentially we're gonna add options to this pattern. So if you would like to stay with 2 feet on the ground, we're gonna add balances and things like that. Feel free to stay with 2 feet on the ground. You have the basic sequence, we're just making it fancy. Whenever you're ready, take an inhale, lift your arms up. Exhale, fold it forward, and take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, half lift. Exhale, hop or walk. Take your vinyasa if you want, skip it if you want. From downward facing dog, take a breath in, lift your right leg up. As you exhale, step the foot forward, same as we've been doing, and come up into your high lunge. 1-8, we're gonna go, instead of warrior two, if you want, we'll come to Ardha Chandrasana. So sweep down towards the right, up and over, and then I'm gonna let my hands guide me down and over to the left until my left fingers find the ground, right arm reaches up, right leg reaches up. Or you come back to your warrior two, or to a side angle, or to a triangle, whatever serves you at this point. And take about 2 or 3 more breaths in Ardha Chandrasana, or whatever variation you're in. If you're in your balance, you're welcome to try to lift your left hand up and test it. Whee! And then eventually we'll come back into a warrior two. Take the arms up and take our 8s down to the left, up and over, down to the right, up and over. I'm gonna come back to my twist towards the left leg, diving all the way around. You could stay in your twist. You could take your back knee down or stay where you are. If you want, take the palms together for a second, step your right foot to meet the left, and you're in a twisted chair. And then if you would like to, we'll take side crow. I'm going to turn around so you can see me if you need to see me, but I'm in my twisted chair. I'm going to release my sit bones down towards my heels, trying to keep the knee relatively in line. Take the hands down by my sides. I'm going to take them pretty close so that my left elbow is pretty much touching or close to touching my left hip. My right elbow is under my left, knee. And then I'm just going to dive forward with my weight until my feet will kind of have to slide up off the floor. And here I am in my little side crow. If you want to take any fancy variation, strengthening the legs and all of that, go for it. Eventually, we'll meet in a forward fold. So from wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, walk your feet towards the back side of your mat, parallel or hip width apart. Give yourself, a moment to shake things out if they need to be shaken out. And then we'll make our way up to stand. To come back, doing the second side, same thing. So you're in your mountain pose. Take an inhale to lift your arms up and look up. Exhale, fold it forward. Take your fingers down to the floor. Inhale, look forward into your half lift. And exhale to hop or walk. Take a vinyasa or skip it, your choice. We'll meet in downward facing dog. From downward dog, take an inhale. Lift your left leg up. Exhale, step the foot between the hands and come up into your high lunge. Down to the right, up and over. Down to the left, up and over, and then follow the hands, and they go down and to the right as you let your feet turn around, so that you can basically just slide your right hand on the floor and set yourself up for half moon or warrior two, side angle, triangle, one of those side positions. Wherever you land, we'll have maybe 2 or 3 more breaths. If you're in a balance and you'd like to check it, you can lift your right hand up off the floor and see where you're at. And then soften the right knee. We'll step back into warrior two if you're not there. Take your arms up and sweep them down to the left, up and over, down to the right, up and over. And then we'll take it into the twist. From up and over to the left, all the way around to the right knee. Palms together if you want. Step your left foot forward to meet the right if you want. I'm going to turn around to the side again so I face the camera. From here, if you want to take your side crow, lower your hips down so you're kind of crouching on your toes, and then take your hands down by your sides. And I'm going to try to walk myself pretty far over the leg. So my right elbow is pretty much touching my right hip, left elbow to right knee, and then I kind of tip over and see what happens. You can use your head to help you balance. Some people like to put the forehead down and kind of push down. And then at some point, whenever you've had enough of this, we're going to make our way to our forward fold, whatever it is that you're doing. You're back towards the front of the mat, giving yourself a little shake out. Heel toe your feet about as wide as the mat. Lower the hips down into a comfortable squat, just to chill there for a moment. And then we'll come to lay down on the back. So release your pelvis down and lay all the way down comfortably to the floor. Take a moment to wiggle things out if you want to. I'm going to talk you through a bridge and a wheel, but you're welcome to take any back bend that you would like to take. If you are sticking with me, feet are about parallel and about hip width apart, arms are by your sides. And I'm going to press the feet down to lift the hips up. And imagine pulling my feet up towards my shoulders. I could also push them away, which will engage more of the front of the leg. And I'm going to pull them up, so engage a little bit more of the back of the legs. And then if you want to tuck your shoulder blades under until you can interlace your fingers and check in with your neck. You don't necessarily want to turn your head from side to side much here, because there is already a pretty deep flexion. Let's see if you can feel most of your weight on your shoulders and not so much on your head. And take a couple of breaths, or 4 or 5 in your bridge variation of choice. And then you could release your arms, make your way back down to the floor. If you would like to take another bridge, take another bridge. If you'd like a restorative position, take a restorative position. If you would like to take wheel, I think that some of that work that we're doing overhead in chair pose could be handy for the shoulders for wheel. For a lot of people, the problem in wheel is not so much the back as the shoulders. Right? So if you want to try it, feel free to go for it and just see what it feels like after all of this work, which might have been a little too fatiguing. Sometimes it doesn't help. Right? I'm gonna pick myself up and see if I can push my chest through my arms as I straighten my arms a little bit. Or not. Whenever you've had enough, take yourself back down. Oof. And you might take a little wiggle from side to side. From here on, I'm going to take some laying down stuff. As always, you're welcome to do whatever else you'd like to do, but I think there is something interesting to me about finding again the weight of the head and the weight of the ribs and the weight of the spine after they swung around and kind of led movement for a while, to just let them really find their sense of being supported by the ground and an ability to let go of some of these upper back muscles. So if you want to stick with me, ankle to knee, right ankle to left knee, and I'm going to reach either through the thigh, and if you want you can even straighten the left leg up and add a little hamstring stretch, or even for the shin, right? And yes, the hands are holding, so the arms might be doing a little bit of work, but I'm going to try to let everything, but in particular my torso, and I'm talking from back of the pelvis to back of the ribs to back of the head in particular. Find their sense of weight, and if I'm, pulling my leg in, my tailbone and sacrum might be curled up off the floor a little. Mine are, for sure. Some of you are probably more flexible than me in this position. And that's okay. I'm just gonna not push it down, but let the weight of the sacrum be felt, so that the sacrum is kind of tipping or falling towards the floor even here. And maybe I'm even more interested in the head, neck, shoulders releasing down than I am in the hip stretching. Maybe. Whenever you're ready, release the left foot, keep the legs in their figure 4 shape, and I'm just going to drop the knees over towards the right. See if your back is happy with this variation. You can take any twist. We did a lot of twisting, so this in my mind is a little bit more for the hip flexor and for the hip than it is for the twisting aspect. So see what it feels like. And these last couple of poses can be very passive, very quiet. Then gently make your way back up to center. Release the right knee. If you need to give yourself a second to wiggle out, And then we'll have the left ankle over the right knee and grab a hold of your right leg wherever you want. And once I have established my placement, and you might have a few different variations to go through, which is totally fine, but I'm gonna maybe see what happens if I shift my attention from the left hip that might be feeling a lot of stretch. If you're not super flexible, I know these are pretty challenging for me. I'm gonna shift my attention from there to the back of the body where it's laying on the ground. And I'm gonna give my weight into the ground, to the back of the head, to the back of the ribs, to the back of the pelvis and the sacrum, even if they're curling up away from the ground. And then you gently release your right foot back down on the floor. Keep your figure four if you're okay with this variation. And drop the knees towards the left. Then gently release the legs, make your way back to center. If you'd like to take a more active inversion, feel free to do that. I'm just gonna do what I call the dead bug pose, where I'm lifting my arms and my legs towards the ceiling in as lazy a way as possible, and I'm really just trying to feel the weight of my limbs so the legs can be bent. Might be a little bit about finding the plumb line where you don't have to work super hard to hold yourself there, and you might roll your ankles, you might roll your wrists, or just stay where you are and just feel the stability of your torso as it grounds down into the ground, back to the pelvis, and the legs lifted might help you kind of feel the two sides, the two pelvic halves, and the hip sockets even getting a little bit more rooted into the ground, and the arms might drop the shoulders and shoulder blades a little bit more into the ground, back of the head. You're ready, and just make your way into a comfortable resting position. You could stay on your back since you're here. You could flip over onto your belly or onto your side, any shape or position that is comfortable so that you can let your body soften, and as your body softens, your attention might also soften. Your tracking might subside. Your breath might go back to its natural pace if you're still going on a pattern. if you can, as much as possible, simply let yourself be. And if that means that you're getting distracted and your mind is going into its own rabbit holes, that's the job of the brain. There's a way that you can very, very softly observe that too and see what your rumination is about, what your recurrent thoughts are. And it might just be something that you need to do right after you're done with this, or it might be some bigger things that are kind of unresolved and resurfacing every now and again whenever you let your guard down. That's a particular and specific job of the brain, and it can tell us a lot of things about what our individual tendencies are. And then whenever you're ready, and of course you can turn the video off and just be on your own. If you'd like to close with me, you can have your knees in towards your chest, give yourself a moment to wiggle or stretch. I like to open the eyes to kind of relocate myself in space for a second, and then roll over to one side or roll forward and back a few times. Make your way back to a comfortable seat. And we're going to take a seat just for a second, maybe even close your eyes again and see if you can find your vertical axis, kind of like settling yourself in the middle of all of this memory of like sweeping from side to side, of all this activated space that is around us, of all of these thoughts that might keep coming up in circles, right? See if you can find your placement right in the middle of all of that, aware of all of it, but not necessarily swayed by it. And if you want, take the palms of your hands to heart center in gratitude to all of the teachers and all of the students who've gone before, and the greatest teacher of all, which is that within ourselves. Thank you very much. I hope this was helpful, fun, interesting, and I hope to